Now, I've recently really gotten into like detective cases and documentaries and things like that, like whodunits kind of thing. And this video here has been recommended to me by a long-time subscriber, and she says the twists in this video are unreal. So I'm really excited to watch this one. This should be a good one.
What's up, Ewu crew? It's the Raven, back to share another strange, shocking, or interesting, but very true story with you. Today, we're going to explore 3 cases with unexpected twists that I bet you can't guess the ending of. In North Epping, New South Wales, Australia, the Lynn family lived relatively comfortably as Min Lynn, the family's patriarch, was a news agency proprietor and ran a family-owned news agency. With his wife Yun Lynn, the family had 3 children, 9-year-old Terry, 12-year-old Henry, and 15-year-old June Brenda Lynn.
Okay, 3 kids.
Also at the home was Yun's sister Irene Lynn. The family was clearly close, as they lived together and worked together. The news agency even purportedly employed Min Lynn's sister Kathy. Though everything appeared to be going well for the Lynn family, that was about to take a gruesome turn. On the morning of July 18, 2009, Kathy and her husband, Leon Ben Robert Shia, went to the newspaper agency, only to find it closed. This was highly unusual, as the Lynns were always punctual and took their business seriously, as it supported their entire family. Concerned, Kathy and Robert went to the Lynn house to see if they could track down Min and Yoon. What they found would haunt them for years, in more ways than one. Unnervingly, they found the front door to the Lynn family's house open.
Oh no.
Going upstairs, the 2 noticed speckles of what looked like blood on the walls and in the hall between the bedrooms. As they looked closer, they found that the bedrooms were covered in blood spatter from the floors all the way to the ceilings. A terrified Kathy called for the police, barely able to make out the words, "I think someone murdered my brother's family."
Oh my.
But the nightmare only got worse. They then saw the bodies, or rather, what remained of the bodies. The faces of the victims were so marred that when the police and paramedics arrived at the scene, forensic analysis had to be used to identify each of the victims.
Oh my God.
Eventually, it was determined that the victims were Min, Yoon, Terry, Henry, and Irene. All 5 had been bludgeoned with a hammer, though 4 had also been strangled. The only one to survive was Brenda, but she hadn't been home at the time of the slaying. She had been on a school trip, and this likely saved her life. Horribly, the news of the gruesome murder broke before Brenda was contacted, and she learned about the deaths of her entire family through a news article.
Awful.
As an investigation began, Kathy and Robert stepped in to take over the Lynn's newspaper agency business.
I mean, just initially, who would benefit? Maybe these 2? The one that have taken over the business? Maybe they did it for the business?
As well, Brenda, who was completely alone in the world now, was placed into their custody. Robert was noted to be especially eager to gain custody of Brenda in order to care for her after the loss of her family. In fact, just hours after the bodies were discovered, Robert had offered to adopt Brenda. For a month, there were no leads into the identity of the Lynn family's killer, but evidence was starting to pile up. The house showed no evidence of a break-in, which police believed indicated that the killer had a key. As well, nothing in the house had been broken or stolen, which meant that the motive for entering the house was likely only to kill the Lynn family. There were 24 bloody footprints, which told investigators that they were looking for one killer, and they knew that the killer had worn Asics sneakers. But here's the really interesting twist in this case. The forensic evidence, specifically the bloody footprints, indicated that the killer never entered Brenda's room. But why not? If the entire family had been killed, certainly the killer would have looked for Brenda in order to make her a victim as well.
Unless it was Brenda.
But the fact that Brenda's room was never entered indicated something important. The killer knew she wasn't home. This fact seriously narrowed down the possible suspects. Another red flag soon caught the attention of investigators, and I have to be honest, hearing this one really gave me the chills. When they listened back to Kathy's initial phone call to police, they took the time to translate something she'd been yelling frantically to Robert in Cantonese. Well, it turns out she had been desperately pleading with him not to leave her alone in the house.
Oh.
But oddly enough, her husband did exit the home, not seeming to have a single worry about whether or not the killer could still be in the home with his helpless wife.
Oh my God.
Things were starting to come together. What if Robert had known Kathy would be perfectly safe because the only merciless killer around was himself? Of course, it was just a theory at that point, and not enough concrete evidence to make a case. But when officials planted a pinhole camera inside Robert's home, and he was observed cutting up an Asics shoebox and flushing the pieces down a toilet, suspicion quickly turned on him. Forensic investigators examined a stain found in the garage of Robert's house, and it was uncovered that it contained DNA from 4 of the 5 Lynn family victims.
Unreal. Why? Just so you could take the business? For money? Is that it?
Robert was arrested soon after this shocking discovery. But what motive could have driven Robert to kill his wife's entire family so brutally? Well, prosecutors alleged that one of Robert's main motivations was Brenda. That's right, Robert was allegedly attracted to his young niece.
Oh, God, absolutely disgusting. Ugh.
It was then Brenda reportedly told investigators that her Uncle Robert had been allegedly assaulting her before the murder of her family, and that it had only continued after she moved into his home under his custody. During trial, a picture was painted of a man who, in his need to possess his niece, was driven to kill an entire family.
Insane.
Though this is clearly the kind of case that makes headlines, it wasn't so cut and dry in reality. After 2 abandoned trials and a 3rd trial that ended in a hung jury, it was the 4th jury that found Robert guilty in 2017. Robert still maintains that he is innocent of any crime. I uncovered today's next case.
Oh my God, what a horrible... I thought it was maybe for him to sort of get control of the business. Maybe that's what he was after. But it was even worse than that. That's crazy. His own niece, and then to do that to her family, unreal.
Steering my research into the Lynn family murders, and though they both feature family tragedy, the twists couldn't be more different. Where the Lynn family was discovered almost immediately, the fate of the McStay family was a mystery. Well, almost. The McStay family lived in Fallbrook, northern San Diego, and was made up of 40-year-old Joseph McStay, his wife, 43-year-old Summer McStay, and the couple's 2 preschool sons, 4-year-old Gianni and 3-year-old Joey Jr. Joseph worked as an entrepreneur who sold indoor water fountains. The family was known for being characteristically happy and successful. However, this wouldn't last. By mid-February 2010, it became glaringly clear that something was wrong with the McStay family. None of the family members had been heard from since the 4th, which was highly unusual. When the house was investigated, food was discovered on the counters just left where it had been dropped, and it was now rotten. The treasured family dogs were found left outside in the cold, something completely unusual for the family who loved the animals to have carelessly done. Yet despite these concerning clues, there was no sign of forced entry at all. The house was locked besides a small window. There was no evidence of a struggle and not even a trace of violence. As well, because there was no suspicious activity on their credit cards, it ruled out the possibility of a robbery. What there was evidence of, though, was that the family had left the house in a hurry and of their own free will. As a search began for the McStay family, their Isuzu Trooper was soon found where it had been abandoned in San Ysidro, near the U.S.-Mexico border. A theory arose to explain the family's absence, that they had intentionally gone over the border, but once there, they met a tragic but unknown fate.
But what for? What for? Like a vacation? Like why? Why else would they want to, do this?
This theory made sense because investigators couldn't understand how a family with no known enemies and who were widely regarded as loving could have met a more sinister end.
Unless he was involved in something that the family didn't know about, maybe to help his income. Maybe he was the sole provider.
However, family members disagreed that they would have left without telling anyone. The case went cold. Had the McStay family simply vanished, never to be found? Answers wouldn't come for close to 4 years.
Wow.
It wasn't until November 2013 when this case had its first twist. A dirt biker riding through the desert outside Victorville made a grim discovery. Peeking out of the sand was something white, almost like a stone. When the dirt biker came closer,
bones, maybe?
They realized that it wasn't a stone at all, but a skull. Horrifically, the skull was too small to belong to an adult and had to have been a child's. When investigators came to have a look, they found that the skull wasn't alone. They uncovered a shallow grave filled with a total of 4 bodies, 2 adults and 2 small children. It was the McStay family. But the bodies weren't alone. Also tucked within the grave was a sledgehammer. The McStay family had been beaten to death. Joseph was found with an electrical cord wrapped around his neck, while Gianni bore the evidence of at least 7 blows to his skull.
Oh my God, who could do this? Who?
DNA that didn't belong to a McStay family member was soon found on the steering wheel and shift gear of the car, along with a cell phone pinged near the gravesite a few days after the McStays had gone missing. Both belonged to Charles Chase Merritt.
But why
Looking back,
Charles?
investigators realized that when Merritt, a welder, was interviewed about the McStays just 2 weeks after their disappearance, he had continued to use past tense, referring to Joseph by
as if he knew they were dead. Like, you know, most people would be like, oh, I hope they're found, blah, blah, blah. But he knew they were dead.
saying he was my best friend. Merritt had been Joseph's business partner, but there was evidence that before his death, Joseph had begun to sideline Merritt. Investigators believe that Merritt had allegedly been stealing from the McStay's company and that he owed Joseph almost $43,000. But what doesn't make sense is how Merritt could have killed the entire McStay family without any evidence of a struggle. Had they gone willingly to their deaths?
Maybe he hired someone. He hired somebody maybe to do it. And he lured them there for the person to do it there.
At his trial, Merritt broke down in tears and professed his innocence, saying, "I don't deserve this. I did not do this." In 2020, nearly a decade after the McStay family vanished and was brutally killed, Merritt was found guilty of 4 counts of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison for killing Joseph, but for Summer and the 2 children's murders, he was sentenced to death. I may have saved the story with the most unexpected twists for last. In 1986, 15...
Man, over money. So, you know, you stole money from the guy's business, and how do you pay him back? By taking him out and his whole family. I mean, that is just insane. Insane what people can do for over money. It's scary, isn't it? It's scary.
Year-old Annie Andrews, who lived in Pepperell, Massachusetts, started receiving phone calls from a stranger. She wasn't particularly concerned because the stranger on the other end was a boy around her age named Daniel. Annie, as a trusting young girl, didn't question the calls as much as she probably should have. Instead, she assumed that a friend must have given Daniel her number. Daniel called frequently to talk, but as Annie couldn't see him, she had to rely on his description of himself to imagine what he was like. Daniel told Annie that he was a tall, blonde, good-looking, and athletic guy. So when he asked her on a date, Annie agreed. You may be guessing that this case ends with Annie's tragic demise, as many of these sad stories go. But you would be very wrong. The boy who met Annie for the date was not at all who she was expecting. The boy who introduced himself as Danny wasn't tall, instead was about 5'8" and
so he catfished her. If anyone doesn't know, catfishing is when you pretend to be somebody else to get someone to meet you for a date. You're obviously not that person. That person's been catfished.
Thin, and he wasn't blonde. Instead, he had greasy dark hair and thick, untamed eyebrows. Daniel was awkward and had a noticeable lack of hygiene, none of which was helped by the fact that he had lied to Annie. Still, they went on the date and attended a local fair. It was while walking along the fairgrounds among the flashing lights and the smell of greasy food that Annie mentioned that her mother had died of cancer. Hearing this, Daniel's eyes appeared to light up and he became incredibly interested, not in comforting the grieving girl as one would imagine, but instead incessantly asking her invasive questions about the death.
This guy, clearly something very wrong with him. Very wrong with him.
He mostly wanted to know how much Annie's mother had suffered.
What?
Annie, disturbed by this and upset that Daniel had lied to her about who he was,
declined
away to go on a second date with him. And that's where the story should have ended. But it didn't. Annie went home to her father Brian and her younger sister Jessica, who was 8 at the time. It was soon after her date with Daniel that Annie and Jessica both started to notice strange things happening around the house.
Oh, God.
Late at night, the two girls would hear tapping on the walls.
Oh, no.
You can't blame the girls, who had just lost their mother, for considering that the noises could be coming from a ghost. This wasn't helped by the fact that Brian, as a suddenly single parent, had to work more to support the family and was frequently out of the house, leaving the girls alone.
Oh my God.
Some stories say that the girls held a seance to conjure the spirit of their mother, but this has never been verified.
Dude, he's followed her home, hasn't he? Oh God, he's stalking them, isn't he?
The strange tapping continued. It woke them in the middle of the night, and soon the girls were hardly sleeping at all. Then things started to move around the house. Food would vanish from counters within minutes of being put there. They told their father it was a ghost. He was unconvinced. But then the writing started. One night while the girls were alone, they reportedly heard the tapping again, this time from below. The girls crept downstairs and, in the basement, found something scrawled on the wall. The message reportedly read, "I'm in your room, come and find me."
Dude, come on, man. If you found that on your wall, dude, I'm calling the cops. I don't care. That's creepy as hell, isn't it? Come and find me. I'm in your room.
It looked to be written in blood.
Oh.
This understandably freaked them out. 2 weeks later, the next message was written in Annie's bedroom. "I'm back. Find me if you can."
Bro.
Terrified that they were being haunted, the girls called and told their father. Though he didn't quite believe them, he came home to put their fears to rest.
Yeah.
As he entered Annie's bedroom, Brian made a shocking discovery.
Oh my God. What?
Standing in his daughter's room was someone with long blonde hair, wearing a dress that had belonged to his deceased wife. When the person turned, he realized, shockingly, that it was a young man, wearing a wig and makeup and holding a hatchet.
Hell?
He attempted to attack Brian, but he managed to fight him off. And, of course, call the police.
Dude.
Investigators found the boy in the Andrews house, hiding within the crawl space.
Oh.
It became abundantly clear that the boy had been living in the walls of the house for months.
Oh my God.
He was arrested and charged with a variety of crimes.
Dude, put him, don't let him out. Do not let him out. Hopefully they gave him life for that. I know they didn't, but they should.
The young man was allegedly 17-year-old Daniel LaPlante.
17?
To be clear, the exact details of this story have become a little less clear with how many times it has been retold and dramatized over the years. For instance, in some versions, people say that the intruder was actually dressed as a Native American instead of a woman. Either way, as the facts aren't 100% clear at this time, please be aware that these are merely allegations. Daniel had allegedly been the ghost harassing Annie for months after she had rejected him, which might be one of the more extreme reactions to being rejected that I've ever heard of.
Yeah, tell me about it. Like, dude, just move on. Like, you don't... Who does this? Like, because you got rejected, declined on a second date. Like, who lives in the person's house in their crawl space?
But apparently this wasn't all that unusual. Well, it was, but not for Daniel.
So he's done it before.
You see, before he began harassing the Andrews, he had an alleged history of breaking into people's houses and stealing. But reportedly, he also immensely enjoyed moving things around in people's homes to let them know that he had been there, without it being obvious. After being arrested, Daniel stayed at a juvenile's facility for about a year before he was released. It was only a month before he went back to his old ways, though this time he went even further. He broke into his neighbor's home where he found and allegedly stole 2 handguns. Okay, so while the details are a little fuzzy on Daniel's alleged time living in the walls, he was about to do something far more dark and insidious. And in this case, the facts are crystal clear. Spurred by his first crime since being set free, Daniel, now armed, decided to enter someone else's home uninvited. A half-mile from his house, he made his way into the home of 33-year-old Priscilla Gustafson.
I'm sorry, this guy, he's clearly never going to change. Like, he's never going to stop doing this stuff. Why do they keep letting him out? Like, why? Why do they keep letting him go?
A pregnant church nursery school teacher. At the time, she was home alone with her 2 children, 7-year-old Abigail and 5-year-old William. Daniel attacked Priscilla and assaulted her before allegedly shooting her multiple times at point-blank range. He purportedly left her laying face down on her bed, with her pillows covered in blood. Daniel proceeded to attack and drown the 2 children, leaving each of them in separate bathrooms. As a manhunt ensued to find the Gustafsons' killer, Daniel's reign of terror continued. While on the run, Daniel went a few towns over from Townsend and allegedly kidnapped a woman at gunpoint, forcing her to drive him around in her Volkswagen van. But the lucky woman managed to escape on foot and told the police of the incident. Police attention turned to Daniel LaPlante. After days of searching, they found him in one of the most unlikely places.
In a crawl space?
Not the walls of someone's house, as you may suspect, but a dumpster at a lumber yard. Though he was arrested without incident, he disturbed the arresting officers by allegedly laughing maniacally all the while.
Kid is a straight psychopath, isn't he? Just complete psycho.
At a trial in 1988, Daniel LaPlante was convicted of the triple murder and given 3 life sentences.
Finally.
Is it really a big shock that the guy who lived in someone's walls later became a murderer?
Oh my God. I mean, all 3 of those stories was just, wow. But that last one, that kid, Daniel, what is wrong with him? At 17, he's doing that. Like, my question is, these people, these psychos, are they born or are they made? Like, is it something that happens to them in their life that makes them into these, you know, these psychos, or are they just literally born that way? It's because this kid is so young, 17 years old, and he's doing this kind of stuff. Like when I was 17, you know, I was just playing games, you know, I was having fun, you know, running around and stuff. But like, what the actual hell? Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to link a very similar one just below this, and I'll see you there.